الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد فإن أصدق الكلام كلام الله وأحسن الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار وبعد. Apologies Ikhwan for lateness due to the travel from Birmingham to Slough. He didn't want me to say it, but our brother took one of the wrong motorways and we were on the basis that we were delayed slightly. Allahumma musta'an. Human error, qaddar Allahu ma sha fa'al. Jazakumullahu khairan. Jazakumullahu khairan, ikhwan, for the hudur, for those of you who have turned out. And no doubt, the likes of these sessions, ikhwan, these are sessions wherein our Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he informed us and spoke concerning. The Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam mentioned that which is related to sessions connected to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he praised those who gather for its sake. مَجْتَمَعَ قَوْمٌ فِي بَيْتٍ مِّن بُيُوتِ اللَّهِ يَتْلُونَ كِتَابَ اللَّهِ وَيَتَدَارَسُونَهُ بَيْنَهُم. And indeed no people gather in a house from the houses of Allah, which this no doubt is one of the nicest of them, I must say, in this part of England, alhamdulillah. يعني يتلون كتاب الله, reciting the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and studying it between them, except that they have the angels descending upon them and they are overcome by the sakina of Allah azza wa jal, that is the tranquility of Allah azza wa jal. Yani Allah descends tranquility upon them, or causes tranquility to descend upon them, and indeed the angels spread their wings over them. وَذَكَرَهُمُ اللَّهُ فِي مَنْ عِنْدَهُ. And Allah Azza wa Jal mentions them in the gathering that is with Him. And so, not no doubt, if that is the only benefit or blessing, then ikhwan, wallahi al-azim, it is a blessing that is azim jiddan, ikhwan, and a reality that we hope Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala causes us to be from among the people of that hadith. Indeed, ikhwan, in this session we want to discuss a ayah or a surah from the surah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His kitab, Surah Lail, as all of you are acquainted and I'm sure you've seen advertised. The surah, ikhwan, that is a Meccan surah, and from the surah, ikhwan, that are considered Meccan, for which reason, ikhwan, and on what basis? When it is said Meccan surah, Madani surah, what is understood from that? Meccan surah, if we say that this surah is Madani, غير عيسى. جزاك الله خير. Or somebody that probably doesn't know the answer. ولا أنت يا داود. Anybody else? When it said Meccan surah, Madani surah, what causes a surah to be considered Makki or Madani? Revealed in Mecca, and if it's Madani, it's revealed in Medina. Everybody agree with that? No. La? You agree?
Before and after migration. Anything before migration is Makki.
Yeah.
After migration,
أحسنت جزاك الله خير. As our Sheikh and elders mentioned, it is that which is related to the Hijrah. Anything that is before the Hijrah is considered Makki. And anything that was after the Hijrah is considered Madani. And that is, Ikhwan, that there were surah that were revealed, or ayat from surah that were revealed outside of Makkah. But if it was revealed before Hijrah, it is considered Makki. And if it was revealed after Hijrah, it was considered Madani. And as Ahl al-Ilm mentioned, that the surah that were revealed before and after Hijrah, they have certain attributes. That some of those surah that were revealed, or the majority of the surah that were revealed before Hijrah, have within them characteristics of the establishment of Iman and Tawheed, have in them the establishment of the Aqidah, have within them that which is related to the hereafter, the establishment of the Nubuwah and prophethood, establishing the fact that Allah Azza wa Jal truly will cause people to be raised and resurrected from the dead. And it has within it, or they have within them, certain characteristics that are common within the Makki surah. And as far as the Madani surah, then though they share with the Makki surah in that they have in them those same characteristics of the establishment of the Aqidah and Iman and the Ba'th Ba'd al-Maut, but we also have alongside that which is related to the Ahkam and the rulings, and that which is related to the government of state, that which is related to the establishment of the Ahkam of Jihad, that which is related to affairs connected to Halal and Haram. And so the Makki and the Madani surah, they have slightly different in terms of the subject matter and in terms of that which is present within them from ayah. Though no doubt the affair of Tawheed is present throughout the whole of the Quran in all of those surah, whether Makki or Madani, and the establishment of the Aqidah is present throughout all of the surah of the Quran. As far as Surah Lail is concerned, then Surah Lail is a Makki surah. And thus, Ikhwan, we're going to have, or you're going to see within it, some of the issues more related to the affairs of Aqidah, Tawheed, Taqwa, and the likes, though it does have in it something related to Ahkam. And we're going to be depending in regards to the tafsir of the surah upon two main sources. The first is that which is related to the tafsir of Imam Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala. And the tafsir of Imam Sa'di we've chosen because of ease and nothing else. If we had more time, then we would have chosen something like tafsir Ibn Kathir or Al-Baghawi, or tafsir of Imam Al-Tabari, which is a lot more detailed and have riwayat and narrations that require discussion, and likewise some riwayat and narrations that are weak, and the discussion of that would no doubt would be present within that. But in this session, we want to work through and discuss the kalam of Sheikh Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala, Abdul Rahman bin Nasir Sa'di, the Sheikh and the teacher of Sheikh Muhammad bin Salih Al-Uthaymin, and Sheikh Abdullah bin Aqil and others, and Sheikh Abdullah Al-Bassam and others. Similarly, Ikhwan, we want to be utilizing the speech of Al-Imam, that Hafiz Al-Kabir, that Jihbidh, Al-Imam Ibn Al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala. And Imam Ibn Al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, his speech around Surah Al-Lail occurs in various writings around various works of Al-Imam Ibn Al-Qayyim, and we're going to be quoting from them bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And so, inshallah, to begin with that which is related to the surah itself, Allah Azza wa Jal begins in the surah with the basmala. And the basmala, ayyuha al-ikhwah, is present, as you know, in the beginning of every surah in the Quran other than Surah At-Tawbah or Surah Bara'ah. And Allah Azza wa Jal begins Surah Al-Bara'ah or Surah At-Tawbah without mentioning, or without the mention of the basmala. Bara'un min Allah wa Rasulih, that Allah Azza wa Jal declares His bara'ah from the mushrikeen and from those who broke the covenant with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger. And so it begins with that basmala. Rather, Allah Azza wa Jal addresses the affair immediately without mentioning that famous or the common basmala that is present within all of the beginning of the surah of the Quran, that Allah Azza wa Jal, it begins the surah without that. As far as Surah Lail is concerned, then it begins with the basmala, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Then Allah Azza wa Jal, He mentions وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا يَغْشَى. And as far as Surah Lail is concerned, Ikhwan, and Surah Lail begins with the qasam. As many of the surah of the Quran, they begin with the qasam from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the qasam is that which Allah Azza wa Jal utilizes in the beginning of certain surah, wherein Allah makes an oath by way of certain things within His creation, and occasionally that Allah Azza wa Jal makes an oath by Himself, with Himself. In the beginning of this surah, we have Allah Azza wa Jal swearing by al-layl. And it is for Allah, as the Mufassirun they mention, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may swear by anything that He wishes within His creation. As far as the creation are concerned, then it is not permissible for them to swear except by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But Allah Azza wa Jal may swear by anything within His creation that He wishes. Allah swears by His angels on some occasions, and then Allah Azza wa Jal swears by aspects within His creation. And that no doubt has an indication, as some of the scholars mention, to that which is related to that thing that Allah Azza wa Jal swears by, and the fact that it has some importance or some relevance, or that it is from the greater aspects of His creation. Allah in this surah begins by swearing by the layl, swearing by the night. But elsewhere in the Quran, Allah swears by the night. Allah Azza wa Jal swears مثلا by time, wal asr. Allah Azza wa Jal swears by His angels, and that occurs in a number of surah. وَالصَّافَّاتِ صَفًّا or وَالذَّارِيَاتِ ذَرْوًا. Anybody else, Ikhwan, come to mind any other surah wherein Allah makes an oath? وَالْفَجْرِ by Fajr, وَلَيَالِ الْعَشْرِ وَلَيَالٍ عَشْرٍ. Anywhere, by Fajr Allah swears. وَالسَّمَاءِ وَالطَّارِقِ. Allah swears by the heavens and at-tariq, which is the star that is referred to as at-tariq, or was-sama'i dhatil buruj. Allah Azza wa Jal swears in the beginning of some surah, and Allah swears in the middle of certain surah. Allah Azza wa Jal mentions فَلَا أُقْسِمُ بِمَوَاقِعِ النُّجُومِ. Allah Azza wa Jal mentions فَلَا أُقْسِمُ بِمَوَاقِعِ النُّجُومِ. And those of you who may have studied some Arabic may be slightly confused as to why Allah says لَا أُقْسِمُ بِمَوَاقِعِ النُّجُومِ. Why is it لَا أُقْسِمُ? That indeed Allah mentions la, and then أُقْسِمُ بِمَوَاقِعِ النُّجُومِ. Mawaqi' al-nujum are the patterns, or the setting or the manner in which the stars set in the sky. The constellations of the stars and the patterns that the stars form and or formulate within the sky. Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned فَلَا أُقْسِمُ بِمَوَاقِعِ النُّجُومِ وَإِنَّهُ لَقَسَمٌ لَوْ تَعْلَمُونَ عَظِيمٌ. Allah mentions, how do we understand it, Ikhwan? فَلَا أُقْسِمُ, then I do not swear by the setting of the stars. ايش قلت؟ اذكر قوله. هو لا شك it's the waw al-qasam, the lam here, or the la here, is a la of tawqeed, that it establishes emphasis to the oath. So Allah Azza wa Jal is not saying that I do not swear by the mawaqi' al-nujum. Allah is saying, indeed I swear by the mawaqi' al-nujum. Indeed, certainly, فَلَا أُقْسِمُ بِمَوَاقِعِ النُّجُومِ وَإِنَّهُ لَقَسَمٌ لَوْ تَعْلَمُونَ عَظِيمٌ. And indeed, it is a qasam. It is an oath. لَوْ تَعْلَمُونَ. If only you knew. that is azim, that is tremendous, if only you knew. And that no doubt returns back to the knowledge of Allah Azza wa Jalla and our jahl. On the basis of the fact that we're ignorant of the reality of the tremendous nature of the stars and how Allah Azza wa Jalla has created them, and that which is present above us, and that which is mawjood and present from the celestial bodies, we no doubt are ignorant. But Allah Azza wa Jalla, on the basis of His ilm, the tremendous nature of that which is above us from His creation, Allah Azza wa Jalla swears by way of them, فَلَا أُقْسِمُ بِمَوَاقِعِ النُّجُومِ إِنَّهُ لَقَسَّمٌ لَوْ تَعْلَمُونَ عَظِيمٌ. Indeed, it is an oath, if only you knew, that was tremendous. And here Allah Azza wa Jalla makes the oath by the night, as it envelops. The night as it covers the earth of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and covers His creation. وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا يَغْشَى. No doubt, أيها الإخوة, that is an oath that is again tremendous. If you reflect upon that which is present within the night, and that which comes with the night, and the nature in which Allah causes the night to wrap around the day. And that, brothers and sisters, again is from the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and from the things that establish the fact that it was not the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam who wrote the Quran, as mustashriqun say, as the Orientalists say, but that it no doubt is tanzilun min Rabbil Alameen. It is a revelation from the Lord of all the worlds. Because Allah Azza wa Jal mentions concerning the night and the day, يُكَوِّرُ اللَّيْلُ عَلَى النَّهَارِ وَيُكَوِّرُ النَّهَارُ عَلَى اللَّيْلِ. That Allah Azza wa Jal causes the night to wrap around the day, and causes the day to wrap around the night. Why would the Messenger Muhammad, if he had written the Quran himself, why would he refer to the night as wrapping around the day, and the day as wrapping around the night? This affair of takwir, if a person makes takwir of his imama, of his turban, he wraps it around his head. He makes takwir of the turban. Here the Messenger ﷺ, from the ayat that he was given, recited to those people who were present during his time and witnessing the revelation of the Quran, يُكَوِّرُ اللَّيْلَ عَلَى النَّهَارِ وَيُكَوِّرُ النَّهَارَ عَلَى اللَّيْلِ. لماذا؟ الله أكبر. Allah. So why did the Messenger ﷺ, if it was something that he had written with his own hands, why would he refer to the night as wrapping around the day? Ikhwan, no doubt the ayah establishes, for the one who reflects upon it, establishes that which was not known at the time of the Messenger ﷺ, and that is that the earth was round. That which was present, Ikhwan, from the belief of the people at that time was not that the earth was round. But the fact that the Messenger ﷺ, the ayah that he recited to the people, mentioned يُكَوِّرُ اللَّيْلَ عَلَى النَّهَارِ, he causes the night to wrap around the day, and the day to wrap around the night, using a word that is used for that which is circular in form, or that shape, or that which is spheric, if you like, then that has in it an indication of the fact that the Messenger ﷺ did not write the Quran. For he would not use that type of language for something that was not known at that time. But the fact that the Messenger mentioned that يُكَوِّرُ اللَّيْلُ عَلَى النَّهَارِ, and if you were to look, ikhwan, in our time now, we have the development of certain technologies. If you were to look at satellite pictures of the earth, and those parts of the earth that have in them night, and those parts of the earth that have in them day, or upon them day, you would see that the earth is literally moving around the globe on the basis of that which is witnessed, that it moves around the globe as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes it. And so, no doubt, the night and the day, they follow one another in terms or in respect to them moving around the globe and wrapping around the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so it envelops the earth, as Allah Azza wa Jal mentions, and Allah Azza wa Jal, after swearing by the Layl, Allah likewise swears by the Nahar. After mentioning وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا يَغْشَى, he mentions وَالنَّهَارِ إِذَا تَجَلَّى, and by the day when it tajalla, yani when it begins to make itself, or it begins to come through and shine, and begins to make itself clear. And that, ikhwan, is something that was clarified in the Tafseer of Shaykh Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala. He mentions وَهَذَا قَسَمٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ سُبْحَانَهُ وَتَعَالَى بِالزَّمَانِ الذي تقع فيه أفعال العباد على تفوت أحوالهم، فقال والليل إذا يغشى، أي يعم الخلق بظلامه فيسكن إلى مأواه ومسكنه ويستريح العباد من الكد والتعب. He mentions that indeed this which Allah Azza wa Jal swears by here is time, in essence. For indeed he mentions in it, within time, we have the actions of the servants occurring upon the different states that they have and the different conditions that they are in. He says, so Allah Azza wa Jal mentions by the night as it envelopes. He mentions that it encompasses the creation with its darkness, and thus tranquility is established within it for those who use it for tranquility or take tranquility from it, and the servants take rest from the difficulties of their labor. He mentioned وَالنَّهَارِ إِذَا تَجَلَّى, and by the day as it makes itself apparent, and that is that it makes itself apparent to the creation. فَاسْتَضَاءُ بِنُورِ وَانْتَشَرُوا فِي مَصَالِحِهِمْ. He said, and so they receive light from its nur, and they move and they become active for that, or in pursuit of that which is or returns back to them with good. And so Allah Azza wa Jal swears by the day and swears by the night, and that resembles, ayyuhal ikhwa, that which is present within Surah Asr. Allah mentions وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ, that Allah swears by time and then mentions that indeed mankind is at loss, إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, except those who have iman, وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, and work righteous deeds, وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ, and advise each other with the haqq and advise each other with patience. And you'll see that even though that surah is small and the number of its ayat are few, you'll see, ikhwan, there are resemblances with Surah Asr and that which is present here from Surah Lail. Allah Azza wa Jal here swears by the day and by night, by way of which time manifests and continues. And then Allah Azza wa Jal swears by one of His creation, and that is وَمَا خَلَقَ الذَّكَرَ وَالْأُنْثَى. Allah Azza wa Jal mentions وَمَا خَلَقَ الذَّكَرَ وَالْأُنْثَى, and وَمَا خَلَقَ الذَّكَرَ وَالْأُنْثَى. Here Allah Azza wa Jal utilizes وَمَا, but the reference here is to Himself subhanahu wa ta'ala, يعني and the one who created الذكر والأنثى, the one who created mankind, the one who created males and females. And this ayah, though in that which is apparent it would appear to be referring to creation, Al-Imam Ibn al-Qayyim and others have mentioned that in actuality the ayah refers to every single animal, everything that was created in a male and female form. Then the ayah is applicable and returns back to that. And that no doubt is present, ikhwan, in the statement similarly of Sheikh Abdul Rahman bin Nasir al-Sa'di. He said, وَكَمَالُ حِكْمَتِهِ فِي ذَلِكَ أَنْ خَلَقَ مِنْ كُلِّ صِنْفٍ مِنَ الْحَيْوَانَاتِ الَّتِي يُرِيدُ إِبْقَاءَهَا ذَكَرًا وَأُنْثَى لِيَبْقَى النَّوْعُ وَلَا يَضْمَحِلْ وَقَادَ كُلًّا مِنْهُمَا إِلَى الْآخَرِ بِسِلْسِلَةِ الشَّهْوَةِ. He said that indeed Allah, from His great wisdom and from the perfection of His wisdom, is that Allah Azza wa Jal has created animals in pairs. That is, He created them as males and as females. And that is, He intended to cause the males and the females to remain and not disappear, and not become extinct or not disappear, that males and females will continue to exist. And He caused one to be attracted to another by way of desire. That is, that the species of that animal would continue to exist. And that He made both of them relative to the other. فَتَبَارَكَ اللَّهُ أَحْسَنُ الْخَالِقِينَ. And so, praise be to Allah Azza wa Jalla, glory be to Allah, the best of those who have created. And so here, ikhwan, Allah, after swearing by the day, swearing by the night, swearing by Himself. Because here, the statement, وَمَا خَلَقَ الذَّكَرَ وَالْأُنْثَى, is that Allah Azza wa Jalla swears by Himself, as Shaykh Sa'di rahimahullah has mentioned and describes. So Allah Azza wa Jalla, after swearing by day and night, swearing by Himself, then we have the following ayah, wherein Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, إِنَّ سَعْيَكُمْ لَشَتَّى. And that, أيها الإخوة, is the muqsamu alayh. That is the thing that Allah Azza wa Jal is actually swearing by. That those oaths that occur in the beginning of the surah fall in actuality upon this ayah. إِنَّ سَعْيَكُمْ لَشَتَّى. That indeed your sa'i, your striving is, or your forms of striving are various. And that, brothers and sisters, as Shaykh Sa'di, he mentions, هذا هو المقسم عليه. أي إن سعيكم أيها المكلفون لمتفاوت تفاوتا كثيرا. That is, O you who are bound by the Sharia, those of you who have come of age and are considered mukallafun and bound by the Sharia, that is any human being that has come of age, إِنَّ سَعْيَكُمْ لَشَتَّى. Verily your striving and your sa'i, it differs and they differ. Some of you striving for that which is related to iman and the establishment of iman and ilm and righteous action and khair and the hereafter, and trying to avoid kufr and shirk and bid'ah and ma'asi and sin, while some of you striving towards that, striving for shirk, striving for kufr, striving for bid'ah, striving for kufr, and having a hatred for righteous action and uprightness, and a hatred and a dislike for that which is good and that which leads to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This term that is used, sa'i, is something that was explained, ikhwan, by Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala. And he mentions that there is a difference between sa'i and amal. That many erroneously make the tafsir or explain sa'i as being amal, sa'i as being action. But he mentions that there is a subtle difference between sa'i and between action. And the term sa'i is oftentimes translated as striving or your endeavors. But here Ibn al-Qayyim makes an important point. He mentions فَلَفْظُ السَّعِي هو العمل لكن يراد به العمل الذي يهتم به صاحبه ويجتهد فيه بحسب الإمكان. He said that the term sa'i is, what is intended is action. He said, but what is intended is the action that the sahib or the one who carries it out pays special concern to it. وَيَجْتَهِدُ فِيهِ, and he strives in its way, in accordance with ability. He said, فَإِنْ كَانَ يَفْتَقِرُ إِلَى عَدُوِّ بَدْرٍ أو بدر عَدَى وإن كان يفتقر إلى جمع أعوانه جمع وإن كان يفتقر إلى تفرغ له وترك غيره فعلى ذلك. He said, if he needs if the need is for his body, for him to move quickly, then he does so. If the need is for him to gather helpers, then he does so. He strives towards that. If his need is to leave alone or to free himself up for that action and leave alone other than it, then that is what he does. And so here, sa'i, if it was as this final statement or this final sentence, he mentions, if it necessitates that one leaves alone action, that frees himself up for that action and leaves alone other than it from actions, then that is what he does. And so here, sa'i can include the absence of action. That a person in actuality frees himself up for the thing that he's striving for. And that is from sa'i and from striving towards whatever it is a person strives towards. And so sa'i then has a slightly different, there's a subtle difference, but there's a different meaning, or it has a different meaning to amal. Action is when a person actually does something with his body, while sa'i is more comprehensive, it is vaster in meaning, and it may encompass that which is related to leaving alone action or freeing oneself up for action or for whatever it is that individual strives for. And so Shaykh al-Imam Ibn al-Qayyim, he mentions فَلَفْظُ السَّعِ فِي الْقُرْآنِ جَاءَ بِهَذَا الْإِعْتِبَارِ. He said throughout the Quran, this term sa'i, it comes carrying this meaning. So whenever you find this affair of sa'i being mentioned, it carries this meaning. Yani it is not just action. So if it is translated as action and you've read the translation, then understand that its meaning is vaster than that. And so he mentions وَلَيْسَ هُوَ مُرَادِفٌ لِلَفْظِ الْعَمَلِ كَمَا يَظُنُّهُ طَائِفَةٌ. It is not synonymous to amal, to action, as one group of individuals or one group of people believe. He said بَلْ هُوَ عَمَلٌ مَخْصُوصٌ يَهْتَمُّ بِهِ صَاحِبُهُ وَيَجْتَهِدُ فِيهِ. Rather, it is a specific type of action, a particular type of action that the one who carries it out is concerned with it and he strives in its way and in its path. And thus, ikhwan, the affair or that which Allah Azza wa Jal mentions here concerning sa'i is something that is different. Then he brings an example that is established in an authentic hadith. That is a statement of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, إِذَا أُقِيمَتْ الصَّلَاةِ فَلَا تَأْتُوهَا وَأَنْتُمْ تَسْعَوْنَ. He said, if salah is established, then do not come to it وَأَنْتُمْ تَسْعَوْنَ. Do not come to it while you tas'awn. It's from the same word sa'i. And it is translated as moving quickly. Rather, he mentions فَأْتُوهَا نعم وعليكم بالسكينة, and in some riwayat فعليكم بالسكينة والوقار فما أدركتكم من الصلاة فصلوا وما فاتكم فأتموا. That he mentions, then you should come to it having composure and tranquility. And ما أدركتم من الصلاة فصلوا, whatever you catch from the salah, then pray that. وما فاتكم فأتموا, and what you miss, then make it up. So here Al-Imam Ibn al-Qayyim, he explains that even though the Messenger of Allah, he mentioned فَاسْعَوْا, then the intent here is, as he explains, فَلَمْ يَنْهَ عَنِ السَّعِي إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ. The Messenger of Allah was not prohibiting making sa'i to salah or for salah. He mentions فإن الله أمر بالسعي إليها. Why? Because Allah elsewhere has commanded us فاسعوا إلى ذكر الله وذروا البيع, for example, as occurred with Salatul Jumu'ah. فاسعوا, make that sa'i to the remembrance of Allah and leave alone buying and selling. So Allah has commanded us to make sa'i, but here the messenger is saying لا تأتوها وأنتم تسعون. Don't come to it while you're making sa'i. And that is the understanding of that is that Allah Azza wa Jal has commanded us to make sa'i for salah. That is, that we strive towards the establishment of salah. We try and make it early, that we prepare for it, that we pray as close to the front of the sufuf and the front rows as we possibly can, that we make wudu, that we use the miswak. All of those things are from the sa'i towards salah. Here when the Messenger ﷺ said لا تأتوها وأنتم تسعون, that is a reference to the manner in which a person comes to it, which is just one element of going to salah. Here it is a reference to the movement of the body. So it is a particular type of sa'i, and that is the actual movement towards salah, the movement of the one who proceeds towards the masjid, that he should not do it quickly when he proceeds. Should you make sa'i towards or for salah generally? Now, when you hear the adhan, that you leave alone what you're doing. If you're not in wudu, go and make wudu. If you need to make ghusl, then you go and do so. That you perform it well, that you use the miswak, that you walk towards the salah with composure, that you use tatatayyab, and you use perfume, that you wear nice clothing. All of those affairs, ikhwan, are from sa'i towards salah. But the actual affair of moving to salah is something that should be done with composure. So if you make sa'i in the movement, this is what the Messenger has prohibited. Generally making sa'i for salah means striving and ijtihad with all of those different forms of preparation for salah and journeying towards the masjid. And so, hopefully by way of that, we can see that the term sa'i is not synonymous to action. Rather, it refers to the strivings and all that is present within, or all that striving necessitates from an action, a particular action that a person is carrying out. So when Allah Azza wa Jal mentions inna sa'yakum lashatta, then ikhwan, that which is understood from that is not just that you moving this way, you going that way, where we have different movements. Rather, everything that we are about as individuals are different, or are varying. This one, his life revolves around gathering wealth. His life revolves around his business. His life revolves around worshipping idols. His life revolves around following his desires. These are all considered his sa'i in the life of this world. While the second is an individual that his life revolves around no religion whatsoever. Has no concern for that. Rather, he has a particular trade, and his life revolves around his trade. The third, very religious, but his religion is not in accordance with that which Allah Azza wa Jal has commanded. And so he strives for Buddhism. His striving is for Hinduism. And everything that necessitates being a Buddhist, or everything that being a Hindu necessitates. And so each and every individual has his own sa'i. Similarly, among the believers themselves, the believers themselves have different forms of sa'i. One is interested, mathalan, in talab al-ilm, seeking knowledge. His life revolves around that. He's waking up from the time that he wakes to the time that he goes to sleep, and fulfilling on acting upon that. The second is a general Muslim. No real concern for knowledge or for ilm, but he tries his best to do his best. The third, sinful, disobedient to Allah Azza wa Jal. Though, again, he makes tawbah and he turns to Allah, he returns to Allah whenever he sins. but he's not like the first. The fourth, a person of innovation, one who has deviated away from the path, believing that he's on that which is correct. And so even among the Muslimun, the sa'i of individuals are differing. And then, ikhwan, if you think about the various nations, the various cultures, the varying languages, the varying countries, the many billions of human beings that exist on earth and that have existed, and then think, ikhwan, about the reality of the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, inna sa'yakum la shatta. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. If we break for salah and maybe continue shwaya after salah. والحمد لله رب العالمين. والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه وبعد. So as you mentioned, ikhwan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He swears by those great aspects within His creation, the day, the night. And then Allah Azza wa Jal swears by Himself, and the muqsamu alayh, or the thing that Allah Azza wa Jal swears concerning, is that which follows those three verses that have in them the oath, and that is inna sa'yakum la shatta, that indeed your sa'i is يعني la shatta, you have various and varying forms of striving and various types of endeavors. And that, brothers and sisters, will establish to you the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He swears by those things upon this muqsam alayhi, then this affair is something that we should reflect upon. And those oaths, ikhwan, draw our attention to the thing that is being sworn upon. In that regard, we have the statement of Al-Imam Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala. He mentions بحسب تفاوت النفس الأعمال ومقدارها وذلك بحسب تفاوت نفس الأعمال ومقدارها والنشاط فيها وبحسب الغاية المقصودة بتلك الأعمال. هل هو لوجه الله أو هل هو وجه الله الأعلى الباقي فيبقى العمل له ببقائه وينتفع به صاحبه، أم هي غاية مضمحلة ثانية فيبطل السعي ببطلانها ويضمحل بضمحلالها، وهذا كل عمل يقصده غير وجه الله بهذا الوصف. He mentions that indeed the varying or the actions vary in accordance with the following. He said the actions vary and the striving varies in accordance first and foremost with the a'mal themselves, the actions themselves, the nature of the actions and the differing forms of the actions and the amount of the action that is carried out, وَالنَّشَاطِ فِيهَا, and the amount of energy and effort that a person exerts within the action. So even if we were to look at it from a point of view of one action, yani if two individuals are doing one action, doing the same action, those two individuals, their actions would differ in accordance with those elements. One, that which is related to the action or the nature of the action and how that individual carried it out, the amount of the action that that person performs, and the nashat or the energy and the or the amount that a person exerts when he carries an action out. One action in and of itself is may be very different on the basis of the manner in which two different people perform them. So two people may be praying, for example, but because of that which is present within the salah of one, from khushu', from remembrance of Allah, from khashya, from fear of Allah, from recognizing that one is standing before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from remembering death, from remembering the standing in front of Allah Yawm al-Qiyamah, from remembering that this salah is the first thing that will be reckoned Yawm al-Qiyamah, from perfecting the ruku' the sujood, then the salah of one individual will be may be far different from the salah of another individual who does not pay any mind to any of those aforementioned things. Rather his mind is upon that which he was carrying out before he started praying. And so even within one particular action, إِنَّ سَعْيَكُمْ لَشَتَّى. And then he mentions وَبِحَسَبِ الْغَايَةِ الْمَقْصُودَ بِتِلْكَ الْأَعْمَالِ. Secondly, on the basis of the ghaya, of the goal that was intended by way of that action. What was it that the person who carried the action out, what did he intend? If it is an action from the ibadat, mathalan salah, zakah, what have you, did he intend Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with his action? Or was it carried out because of the fact that the people are watching him? Or that individual fears that if he didn't carry it out, then people would accuse him or look down upon him, or look badly, or consider him to be a bad, unrighteous individual, for example. And so the niyat and the intents differ as well and have an effect upon the act, and that, as Sheikh Sa'di he mentioned, is it done for the face of Allah Azza wa Jal, that remains, and thus the action will remain with the face of Allah Azza wa Jal remaining, and so the person who carried it out will benefit from it and continue to benefit from it? Or was it something that was the intent something that would actually disappear? Was the intent something that will eventually go, and thus the benefit of that action disappears, or the action is nullified with the disappearance of that thing, and that it will cease to exist on the basis of that. The action is null and void on the basis of the fact that the intents were not in their place. He said, وَهَذَا كُلُّ عَمَلٍ يَقْصِدُ بِهِ غَيْرُ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ. And that is the affair with every single action that a person does intending other than the face of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so that no doubt is the affair as it relates to action. And then Allah Azza wa Jal goes on to describe two types of actors, two types of individuals who carry out action, and two types of individuals, one of them being praised and one of them dispraised. Allah Azza wa Jal mentions فَأَمَّا مَنْ أَعْطَى وَاتَّقَى صَدَّقَ بِالْحُسْنَى فَسَنُيَسِّرُهُ لِلْيُسْرَى. Allah mentions as far as the one that أعطى, as far as the one that gives, وَاتَّقَى, and he has taqwa, وَصَدَّقَ بِالْحُسْنَى, and likewise he believes and attests to al-husna, فَسَنُيَسِّرُهُ لِلْيُسْرَى, then we shall make al-yusra easy for him. This husna, or that which is mentioned here by way of him believing in al-husna, Ahlul Ilm differ concerning what is intended by it, but the majority of the mufassirun hold that al-husna here is a reference to la ilaha illallah, and that which is the muqtadah, that which the statement la ilaha illallah necessitates from iman, from aqidah, from belief, from righteous action, from methodology, and what have you. That the one who a'ta, who gives, wattaqa, and fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wa saddaqa bil husna, and believes and attests to al husna, believes and attests to kalimat al-tawheed, la ilaha illallah, fasanuyasiruhu lil yusra, then we shall make al-yusra easy for him. And no doubt, ikhwan, that which is related to al-yusra is, again, even though the scholars differ concerning its meaning, is a reference here to al-jannah. And may Allah Azza wa Jalla make us all from its people. Here, ikhwan, al-Imam Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions وما أمر به من العبادات المالية كالزكوات والنفقات والكفارات والصدقات وَالْإِنفَاقُ فِي وُجُوهِ الْخَيْرِ. He mentions that here, أَمَّا مَنْ أَعْطَى, as for the one who gives. And here, ikhwan, the term giving is a term, even though in the mutabadir, or the thing that comes to mind immediately, is to give in charity. But in actuality, the Mufassirun mention that the term is one that is broader than that. That it refers to exerting oneself and striving and giving, even if it is effort, as opposed to actual wealth. And now we're going to look at some of the ahadith that refer to these verses. But generally, ikhwan, the verse is broader in meaning than just to give. Rather, it is broader in that it refers and encompasses exerting efforts. He mentions that as for the one who gives, the one who exerts his effort in ibadat al-maliyah, that is, in carrying out the ibadat or the acts of worship that return to wealth. Ikhwan, from the acts of worship, there are those acts of worship that are referred to as ibadat badaniyah, that is, those acts of worship that are carried out by the body. And then there are those acts of worship that are considered ibadat maliyah, acts of worship that return back to wealth. And that is something that revolves purely around giving one's wealth for a particular cause or for a particular reason. Then from the acts of worship, there are those acts of worship that are considered badaniyah maliyah or maliyah badaniyah, that are wealth and physical, wealth related and physical acts of worship, like al-hajj or like umrah, that it necessitates that a person exerts himself physically, and likewise that he spends from his finances. And so the acts of worship that are referred to here, Shaykh Sa'di, he mentions rahimahullah, ما أمر به من العبادات المالية كالزكوات والنفقات والكفارات والصدقات والإنفاق في وجوه الخير. That it refers here to that which Allah has commanded us with from the acts related, or the acts of worship that relate to wealth, from zakawat, from giving zakah, from nafaqat, from spending upon those who it is wajib upon us to spend upon, like our wives, our children, our parents, if they are in need, and so on. Wal kafarat, and the forms of expiation. From the forms of expiation are those forms of expiation that return back to wealth. Feeding 10 poor people, clothing them, freeing a slave. These are wealth-related forms of expiation that have been legislated and may be wajib upon an individual depending on what he has to expiate for. Was sadaqat, and to give in charity, which ordinarily revolves around spending money. Wal infaqu fi wujuh al-khayr, and spending in the way of good. Not spending in the way of good, ikhwan, it may not necessarily be that which is a charitable or that something that a person may consider a charitable affair, though ultimately it does return back to giving for the sake of Allah if a person does so with the correct intent, and with the intent for khair and the intent for sadaqah. He mentions وَالْعِبَادَاتِ الْبَدَنِيَّةِ كَالصَّلَاةِ وَالصَّوْمِ وَغَيْرِهَا, and likewise the actions that return back to the body, like salah and like fasting and other than that, and al-murakkaba min dhalik kal-hajj, those which are wealth related and bodily forms of action and forms of worship, like hajj and al-umrah. Concerning ikhwan, this affair, Allah Azza wa Jal, after describing that which is related to the person or to the one who is a believer, an upright individual, Al-Imam Ibn al-Qayyim discusses that Allah Azza wa Jal mentions فَسَنُيَسِّرُهُ لِلْيُسْرَى. He said, and this affair of Allah Azza wa Jal making or providing taysir and ease for that individual, not only is it ease, ikhwan, in the hereafter by giving him Jannah, but it is ease in the dunya likewise. Allah Azza wa Jal decrees ease for that person on the basis of that which he has carried out. أَمَّا مَنْ أَعْطَى, as for the one who gives. وَاتَّقَى, fears Allah Azza wa Jal. That these two characteristics Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned are from the causes of good. وَصَدَّقَ بِالْحُسْنَى, likewise that he believes in and attests to al-husna, فَسَنُيَسِّرُهُ لِلْيُسْرَى, then we will make easy for him al-yusra. And the scholars mention as it relates, and the Mufassirun, they mention as it relates to this affair of al-yusra, that we shall make easy for him al-yusra, that is, that it is not only that Allah will make it easy for him, the path to Jannah easy for him, but He shall provide and facilitate ease for him generally. That ease is facilitated for the one who carries out those things. أعطى اتقى صدق بالحسنى. And so, ikhwan, the affair of giving in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is something that we oftentimes neglect, and something, ikhwan, that many of us do little. And that is, brothers and sisters, spending in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It could be spending upon that brother that you know is in need. Spending and giving, ikhwan, to any particular cause, any cause that is from the causes that are considered khair and good. Spending, ikhwan, in such a way that nobody knows that you've given. And it doesn't necessitate that is money that is given to a charity. Ikhwan, spending generally, that a person gets himself into the habit of dipping and of spending from his wealth and of giving away and of giving to others. That is from the greatest of the forms of ihsan and from the greatest of the forms of good, ikhwan, that Allah Azza wa Jal has, or that have been declared from the righteous actions that a person gives. And few of us, ikhwan, are those who do so. And for the most part, we're individuals who carry out the righteous actions from salah and fasting and prayer. But, ikhwan, as far as those other actions that have in them, if we carry them out, the facilitation of ease for us in our affairs, whether in the dunya or in the hereafter, then, ikhwan, that affair is something that shaitan prevents us from doing. Ash-shaytanu ya'idukum al-faqr. Why? Because he promises you and he threatens you with poverty. How are you going to give? If you spend that amount of money that you have there, or half of it, or what have you, then you're going to be broke. Where are you going to get your next money from? And you know how difficult times are right now. And that individual, he shouldn't be begging anyway. He should work like I've worked and earned my money. And he's able-bodied. And he's pretending to be poor. And he's pretending to have a situation. The shaitan, ikhwan, approaches Bani Adam, prevents him from giving that khair. Or he's part of a begging racket. And I'm only aiding them in this begging racket of theirs. Prevents an individual from khair. Though that giving, ikhwan, is something that no doubt brings about ease for the person who gives. And we're always complaining about how difficult life is, and the situations that we have, and the hardships that we go through, and the various forms of difficulty. Ikhwan, part of that or part of that which facilitates ease for a person is that a person gives. And there are a number of ahadith that revolve around that. And maybe, ikhwan, in the coming days, we'll send some of them out, I don't know, on Twitter, or let them circulate some of those ahadith, and the brothers may be acquainted with them. The virtues of giving and spending, whether it be upon a brother, whether it be upon a particular act of khair, but spending, ikhwan, brings about much khair for the one who does so. Imam Ibn al-Qayyim, he mentions concerning that, فَتَضَمَّنَتْ الْآيَاتِ ذِكْرُ شَرْعِهِ وَذِكْرُ الْأَعْمَالِ وَجَزَائِهَا وَحِكْمَةُ الْقَدَرِ في تيسير هذا لليسرى وهذا للعسرى وأن العبد ميسر بأعمال لغاياتها ولا يظلم ربك أحدا وذكر للتيسير لليسر ثلاثة أسباب. He mentions that here Allah Azza wa Jal has mentioned in these two verses, the first set of verses, وَأَمَّا مَنْ أَعْطَى وَاتَّقَى وَصَدَّقَ بِالْحُسْنَى فَسَنُيَسِّرُهُ لِلْيُسْرَى. وَأَمَّا, the second set of verses, وَأَمَّا مَنْ بَخِلَ وَاسْتَغْنَى وَكَذَّبَ بِالْحُسْنَى فَسَنُيَسِّرُهُ لِلْعُسْرَى. As far as the one who bakhil, as far as the one who is miserly and stingy, وَاسْتَغْنَى, and suffices with himself, or feels that he's self-sufficient. I don't need anyone, I don't need anybody. And as far as these individuals claiming that I need, a God of some sort, I don't need anyone other than my own efforts and my own hard work. As I've seen, I have achieved with hard work throughout time the wealth that I have achieved and I have amounted. It is on the basis of the sweat of my own brow. أما من بخل واستغنى وكذب بالحسنى فسنيسره للعسرى. وكذب بالحسنى يعني he disbelieves in al-husna and belies al-husna and rejects it, then we shall make easy for him al-usra, difficulty, hardship. And that, ikhwan, no doubt is something that is relative, and it even, ikhwan, is something that anyone who has a portion of those characteristics have a relative portion of difficulty. That is bakhil, stingy, miserly. Istaghna, he's not in the habit of turning to Allah Azza wa Jal, making dua and supplicating to Allah for his needs. Turning to Allah constantly, da'iman, having that connection with Allah Azza wa Jal, sufficing, he believes, with himself. وَكَذَّبَ بِالْحُسْنَى, and that he denies al-husna, فَسَنُيَسِرُهُ لِلْعُسْرَى, then we shall make difficulty easy for him. And that, brothers and sisters, returns back to that which Allah decrees on the basis of the actions that a person carries out, and on the basis of the niyat that and the intents that a person has, and on the basis of attitudes that a person has within himself. And so Ibn al-Qayyim, he mentions that Allah Azza wa Jal has mentioned then in these verses that which is related first and foremost to the actions and their rewards, and to the wisdoms behind the decree of ease to certain individuals and difficulty upon certain individuals. That some individuals have had ease decreed upon them on the basis of what they carry out. Others had difficulties decreed upon them on the basis of their actions. وَأَنَّ الْعَبْدُ مُيَسَّرٌ بِأَعْمَالِهِ لِغَايَتِهَا, and that a person is made, or actions are made easy for a servant on the basis of the intents of that individual. وَلَا يَظْلِمُ رَبُّكَ أَحَدًا, and your Lord wrongs no one. And so he mentions for the ease of a person, and the ease, or Allah facilitating ease for an individual, three causes of ease. And ultimately, ikhwan, there shouldn't be one of us except that we should be extremely interested in what those three causes of ease are. Though they're present and they've been mentioned. He said, أَهَدُهَا إِعْطَاءُ الْعَبْدِ, the first of them, the servant giving. The first, the servant giving. He said, وَذَلِكَ يَتَنَاوَلُ إِعْطَائِهِ مِنْ نَفْسِهِ الْإِيمَانِ وَالطَّاعَةِ وَالْإِخْلَاصِ وَالتَّوْبَةِ وَالشُّكْرِ وَإِعْطَائِهِ الْإِحْسَانِ وَالنَّفْعِ بِمَالِهِ ولسانه وبدنه ونيته وقصده، فتكون نفسه نفسا مطيعة باذلة لا لئيمة مانعة، فالنفس المطيعة هي النافعة المحسنة. He said, so first and foremost, that a person gives to himself. And how does a person give to himself? He gives to himself by way of iman and ta'a, obedience to Allah Azza wa Jal, and ikhlas, and tawbah, and shukr, thanks and praise to Allah Azza wa Jal, wa i'ta'ihi al-ihsan, and that he does, or he excels in excellence and in benevolence to himself, wa naf' bimali, and that which is beneficial as it relates to the spending of his wealth, wa lisanihi wa badani, and the usage of his tongue and his body, and his niyyah and his intent. فَتَكُونُ, so his self becomes one that is obedient and strives, and not a wretched individual who prevents and doesn't give. فَالنَّفْسُ الْمَطِيعَةِ هِيَ النَّافِعَ الْمُحْسِنَةِ, and so that individual, the one who is obedient, then it is the nafs and the soul that is beneficial and is good. وهي طبعها الإحسان التي طبعها الإحسان وإعطاء الخير اللازم والمتعدي, the one who by nature gives and is one that he's a giver, And then he mentions وهكذا الرجل المبارك ميسر للنفع حيث حل فجزاؤه هذا أن ييسره الله سبحانه وتعالى لليسرى كما كانت نفسه ميسرة للعطاء. He mentions, so here this individual, this Mubarak or blessed individual who is beneficial and brings benefit wherever it is, then his reward is that Allah Azza wa Jal facilitates ease for him just as he facilitated ease for himself and for others by way of his giving. By way of his giving. And there's some speech of Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah that we'll round up on. He mentioned وَالسَّبَبُ الثَّانِي التَّقْوَى. The second cause is التقوى. He said هو اجتناب ما نهى الله عنه وهذا من أعظم أسباب التيسير وضده من أسباب التعسير. He mentions فالمتقي ميسر عليه أمور دنياه وآخرته. He mentions that the second cause is التقوى. He said, and that is that a person stays away from that which Allah Azza wa Jal has prohibited. He said, and this is from the greatest of the causes of ease, that Allah facilitates ease for His servant when he fears Allah Azza wa Jal and stays away from that which He has prohibited. And that which is in opposition to that or that which is in opposition to it is from the causes of ta'sir, from the causes of difficulty. And so the one who fears Allah, Allah Azza wa Jal makes easy for him the affairs of his dunya and of his hereafter. And Allah Azza wa Jal makes mention of the benefits of taqwa and how ease is facilitated in a number of verses. From them, Allah Azza wa Jal, Ibn al-Qayyim, he mentions, وَمَنْ يَتَقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مِنْ أَمْرِهِ يُسْرًا. Whomsoever fears Allah, then Allah brings or facilitates ease for him in his affairs. He likewise mentions, وَمَنْ يَتَقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبْ. Whoever fears Allah, then He makes a way out for him. In that difficulty, that situation that a person experiences, the one who has taqwa, Allah makes a way out for him. And He provides for him by means that he does not perceive. And then he likewise mentions another verse, and that is the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, وَمَن يَتَقِ اللَّهَ يُكَفِّرْ عَنْهُ سَيِّئَاتِ وَيُعْظِمْ لَهُ أَجْرًا. And whosoever fears Allah Azza wa Jal, then He expiates for him his evil, and He makes his reward tremendous, or He makes his reward great. And then he goes on to mention another verse that has in it the benefits of that taqwa. يا أيها الذين آمنوا إن تتقوا الله يجعل لكم فرقانا ويكفر عنكم سيئاتكم ويغفر لكم. That Allah Azza wa Jal mentions that if you fear Allah, or you who believe, then Allah Azza wa Jal will make for you a furqan. He will make for you a criterion to discern between truth and falsehood, haqq and batil, if you fear Allah Azza wa Jal. He mentions وَيُكَفِّرْ عَنْكُمْ سَيِّئَاتِكُمْ, and He will remove from you your sayyi'at, your evil deeds, and He will forgive you. And so Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah, he mentions that indeed in this verse resembles a third verse, and that is the following: يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا اتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَآمِنُوا بِرَسُولِهِ يُؤْتِكُمْ كِفْلَيْنِ مِنْ رَحْمَتِهِ وَيَجْعَلْ لَكُمْ نُورًا تَمْشُونَ بِهِ وَيَغْفِرْ لَكُمْ. O ye who believe, fear Allah and believe in His messenger, and He will give you two portions of His rahmah, two portions of His mercy. وَيَجْعَلْ لَكُمْ نُورًا تَمْشُونَ بِهِ, and He will make for you a light that you will walk with. He mentions وَيَغْفِرْ لَكُمْ, and He will forgive you. And so that which these verses comprise is the following. The first, that Allah Azza wa Jal will give that servant two portions of mercy, one in the dunya and one in the hereafter. Secondly, that He'll give them nur, tamshuna bihi, nur and light that they will walk with in darkness. And that nur, no doubt, is ilm. And thirdly, that Allah Azza wa Jal will forgive them their sins. And the third cause, or the third issue that is from the causes of ease is التصديق بالحسنى, that a person that he believes in al-husna, and some have explained that it is, or some have mentioned that it is in actuality a reference here to Jannah. Al-Husna, that it is a reference here to Al-Jannah. And so, Ikhwan, the affair then of that which Allah Azza wa Jal mentions in the verses is one that returns back to those three elements that will bring about ease for the servant of Allah Azza wa Jal. And that is, if he first and foremost stays away from the sickness and the da' of bukhl, the sickness of miserliness, the sickness of being stingy, the sickness, ikhwan, of holding on to that wealth and loving that wealth that a person possesses, and being an individual, ikhwan, who is afraid to spend. That it is a da', it is an illness, and the Messenger ﷺ has referred to it as such. The Messenger has referred to that miserliness as an illness. In a hadith, ikhwan, that occurs in the Adab al-Mufrad of Imam al-Bukhari, the Messenger ﷺ, he said, وَأَيُّ دَاءٍ أَدْوَى مِنَ الْبُخْلِ. And which illness, which sickness is worse than al-bukhl, than miserliness? Because in actuality, the one who is miserly is only miserly to himself. Because the Messenger ﷺ said that wealth is not depleted by giving. In actuality, one's wealth is increased by giving. But this is the difference, ikhwan, between the one who truly believes in the statement of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, or just reads them and has a superficial understanding of them. Now we understand that the Messenger ﷺ has made that statement, but who truly believes in it? Yani who truly believes from the depths of his heart that if he gives, then it will not deplete his wealth. That if he gives, then this giving will facilitate ease for him. That if he gives, that indeed that giving will be a cause, ikhwan, of him receiving that which is greater than it. All of that returns back to the aqeedah and the belief that a person has in the depths of his heart. Or one will succumb to the whisperings of shaitan, and will succumb, ikhwan, to the trickery of Iblis, and be taken, ikhwan, by the callings and the cravings of his covetous soul. And so what sickness, the Messenger ﷺ mentioned, is greater than al-bukhl? What sickness is greater than al-bukhl? Concerning this element of the verse, ikhwan, we have that authentic statement that was collected by Imam Ibn Jarir, and it has an authentic chain of narration in his tafsir upon the authority of Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhuma, who mentioned أنه قال في تفسير الآية أما من بخل بالفضل واستغنى عن ربي. As far as the one that is miserly with al-fadl. And here Ibn Abbas mentions al-fadl, yani the surplus wealth. Though the term fadl can refer and return back to virtue, or that which a person has from good, from khayr. But the origin, ikhwan, is that one gives from what he loves. True taqwa is achieved and established by giving from what one loves. Allah Azza wa Jal, ikhwan, is mentioned in the Quran, لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. That indeed you will not achieve birr, you will not achieve righteousness. You will not achieve righteousness. And there is not a believer except that his desire is to achieve righteousness. You will not achieve righteousness until you spend from what you love. Note, ikhwan, Allah Azza wa Jalla didn't just say spend from your wealth. Until you spend from what you love. So it is not just having, you've got a few grand spare. You don't know what to do with it. Let me give £20 in charity. I don't know what to do with this few grand that I've got spare. Until you spend from what you love. That thing that you actually wanted to keep. That you spend from it and then you give it away. That, ikhwan, is the type of ata and the type of giving that causes an individual to attain that level of birr and piety and taqwa that Allah Azza wa Jal praises in the Quran. When one of the companions heard that being revealed, or heard that after the revelation of that verse, he came to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and said, Ya Rasulullah, indeed Allah Azza wa Jal has revealed anifan لن تنالوا البر حتى تنفقوا مما تحبون, that indeed you will not attain piety until you spend from what you love, and the most beloved of my wealth is al-bayruha, is a garden, a beautiful garden that he had, that he even named Bayruha. He said that is the most blessed of my wealth, and I want to give it for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. So the Messenger of Allah said, give it then. If that is the case, give it to those who are close to you from your relatives and from your aqriba. The point is here, ikhwan, look at the istijaba and look at the response of the companions of the Messenger of Allah. When they heard those verses being revealed, they didn't say, well, inshallah. Rather, ikhwan, the first thing they thought of is, what do I love the most? What is it that I love the most? Let me give that. Similarly, ikhwan, we have that which is related to the statement of the Messenger that indeed you will not truly believe until you love for yourself, for your brother, what you love for yourself. And that true belief that the Messenger of Allah referred to here is something that is manifest, ikhwan, by giving that which you love. And it could be something as simple as quality streets. Sahih. And from the salaf of this ummah, ikhwan, were those who used to love particular types of food, and so they would give that food in charity. Al-Imam al-Zuhri rahimahullah ta'ala, he used to love asal, a drink that was made from honey, where water would be added to honey, and it would be a drink that was made, but the main constituent of the drink was honey. So he used to make it and he would give it out. Why? On the basis of the fact that it is what he loves, and so he loves it for his brothers. And so it doesn't necessitate, ikhwan, that we all love to be filthy rich, and so for me to really give what I love would be to give rich wealth to my brothers, and I don't have any wealth, so I can't really give anybody anything. La. It could be those simple comforts. So those simple creature comforts that we love. That we love, for example, a particular type of ice cream. And that a person therefore spends that bit more, buy the same ice cream and give it to one's brother. Simple affairs like that, ikhwan. Imagine how many of them a person can amount in a day. That, no doubt, returns back to nurturing oneself upon this characteristic of ata, giving. And not really caring about possessing, ikhwan, great amounts of wealth, because we're ultimately going to leave it, each and every one of us. In any case, there is a statement, ikhwan, from Shaykh al-Islam Taymiyyah. Shaykh al-Islam rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions, وَذَانِ الْأَصْلَانِ هُمَا جِمَاعُ الدِّينِ الْعَامِ. He said that these two affairs, and that is the affair, ikhwan, he's going to go on to clarify, كما يقال التعظيم لأمر الله والرحمة لعباد الله. Because here we have, ikhwan, in the statement of Allah, فأما من أعطى واتقى, and then Allah mentioning وأما من بخل واستغنى. Here we have two characteristics: أعطى واتقى. The one who gives to other than himself from human beings. وَاتَّقَى, and fears Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and relies upon Him. And then بِالْمُقَابِل, on the other hand we have وَأَمَّا مَنْ بَخِلَ وَاسْتَغْنَى. As for the one who is miserly and استغنى, miserly with the people, استغنى عن الله. The one who is miserly with the people and suffices himself or sees himself self-sufficient, have no need for Allah Azza wa Jal. So look at the two characteristics that Allah mentions for the believers. The first two, man a'ta, who gives to other than to the others from the creation, and fears Allah Azza wa Jal. And the two characteristics that Allah mentions for the wretched individual is miserly, doesn't give to the creation, and does not rely upon Allah Azza wa Jal. So these two characteristics we see, one relates to the creation, one relates to Allah subhanahu. The one that relates to the creation is to give. And giving, ikhwan, is from the greatest forms of ihsan ilayhim. Giving is from the greatest forms of manners in which, or forms and manners in which a person can deliver good to the creation, to give to them, to help them. And that could be, ikhwan, giving that which is physical, or even giving, ikhwan, nasiha, advice, da'wah, aiding them, helping them, giving to them, and not being individualistic. And that is from the greatest forms of ihsan. And fears Allah Azza wa Jal. No doubt the affair of taqwa is what Allah Azza wa Jal, throughout His Quran, ikhwan, calls mankind to, fearing Him. For indeed that taqwa would necessitate the performance of actions that Allah Azza wa Jal loves, that will earn that individual the rahmah and the mercy of Allah subhanahu. And thus when we see, ikhwan, in regards to that which is legislated, from the greatest of the wajibat, after the shahadatain, we constantly find throughout the Quran, وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ. From the greatest of the wajibat. إِقَامَةِ الصَّلَاةِ, that which is related to the right of Allah Azza wa Jal. Giving the zakah, though it is from those things that Allah has legislated upon the servants, the khair of it is delivered to the servants of Allah Azza wa Jal. And so from the greatest and the first of the wajib and the most wajib of the actions, there is that which returns back to this right of Allah Azza wa Jal, and then that which returns back to ihsan, to the creation, doing good to the creation. And so here we find, ikhwan, that which, if a person reflects upon the likes of these verses, he formulates and helps to formulate the attitude that the believer should have. That which is related to delivering and carrying out the rights of his Lord and his Creator, wa Mawla. And that which is related to those whom Allah Azza wa Jal has placed him among Bani Adam, the rest of mankind. And those individuals, ikhwan, he carries out ihsan towards them, and the best of that ihsan and the best manner in which a person can do so is by way of fulfilling or carrying out this affair of giving to them. Shaykh Islam Ibn Taymiyyah then, rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions, وَهَذَانِ الْأَصْلَانِ هُمَا جَمَاعُ الدِّينِ الْعَامِ كما يقال التعظيم لأمر الله والرحمة لعباده ولعباد الله. فالتعظيم لأمر الله يكون بالخشوع والتواضع، وذلك أصل التقوى، والرحمة لعباد الله بالإحسان إليهم، وهذان هما حقيقة الصلاة والزكاة. فإن الصلاة متضمنة للخشوع لله وعبودية له والتواضع له والذل له، وذلك كله مضاد للخيلاء والفخر والكبر. والزكاة متضمن لنفع الخلق والإحسان إليهم، وذلك مضاد للبخل. ولهذا وغيره كثر القرآن بين الصلاة والزكاة في كتاب كثر القرآن بين الصلاة والزكاة في كتاب الله. He mentions that these two characteristics, or these two fundamentals, then have in them that which brings together the deen al-am, the deen generally. He said, as it is said, for indeed at-ta'zimu li amrillah, making great the affair of Allah Azza wa Jal, and exalting and deeming it something tremendous, and having mercy to the worshippers of Allah Azza wa Jal. These two affairs bring the whole of the affair of the deen together generally. That which is related to the rights of Allah, that which is related to the rights of the creation. That a person makes ta'zimu li amrillah, extols and deems great and tremendous the affair and the command of Allah Azza wa Jal. And secondly, that one shows mercy to the creation and to the worshippers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, فَالتَّعْظِيمُ لِأَمْرِ اللَّهِ يَكُونُ بِالْخُشُوعِ وَالتَّوَاضُعِ. That to make great the affair of Allah Azza wa Jal is by way of khushu', is by way of having this fear for Allah Azza wa Jal and humility. He said, and that is the origin of taqwa. That is the origin of taqwa. He said, وَالرَّحْمَةُ لِعِبَادِهِ بِالْإِحْسَانِ إِلَيْهِمْ. Having mercy with his servants is by showing them good and dealing with them with excellence and benevolence. He said, وَهَذَانِ هُمَا حَقِيقَةُ الصَّلَاةِ وَالزَّكَاةِ. And that is the reality of salah and zakah. He said, فإن الصلاة متضمن للخشوع والعبودية له والتواضع له والذل له. That indeed salah has in it that fear of Allah, the establishment of worship to Him and servitude to Him, and humility with Him, and lowering oneself for Him. And all of that is in opposition to arrogance and to boasting and to pride. He said, وَالزَّكَاةُ مُتَضَمِّنٌ لِنَفْعِ الْخَلْقِ وَالْإِحْسَانِ إِلَيْهِمْ. Zakah has in it and comprises of benefiting the creation and being benevolent to them. وَذَلِكَ مُضَادٌ لِلْبُخْلِ. And that is in opposition to miserliness. He said, وَلِهَذَا وَغَيْرِهِ كَأْثَرَ الْقُرْآنِ بَيْنَ الصَّلَاةِ وَالزَّكَاةِ فِي كِتَابِ اللَّهِ. And it's for that reason that we find often throughout the Quran the mention of salah and zakah together, that they're coupled together in mention, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions them throughout the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so here then Allah Azza wa Jal praises one set of individuals and dispraises another. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, أَمَّا مَنْ بَخِلَ وَاسْتَغْنَى وَأَمَّا مَنْ أَعْطَى وَاتَّقَى وَصَدَّقَ بِالْحُسْنَى فَسَنُيَسِّرُهُ لِلْيُسْرَى وَأَمَّا مَنْ بَخِلَ وَاسْتَغْنَى وَكَذَّبَ بِالْحُسْنَى فَسَنُيَسِّرُهُ لِلْعُسْرَى. As far as the one that gives and fears Allah, believes in al-husna, then we shall make and facilitate ease for him. And as far as the one that is miserly and sees himself self-sufficient and denies al-husna, then we shall make hardship and difficulty easy for him. And that, subhanallah al-azim, ikhwan, you'll find when you look, ikhwan, among the creation and observe. And it is good for the believer, ikhwan, to be one that observes the creation and observes that which takes place around him. You'll find that that individual who is miserly, who doesn't give, who is stingy as it relates to his wealth, and worse, that appears to like to see or dislike that an individual receives. And from the individual are those who, when one receives from the khair and receives from good, and Allah Azza wa Jal blesses him with something or her with something, then there are individuals, ikhwan, that just can't stand it. Sometimes it is apparent upon the face. Other times it is apparent in speech. And you know exactly what I'm talking about, ikhwan. Sometimes it is apparent upon the face, other times it is apparent in speech. But you'll find that type of individual, ikhwan, if you observe that which manifests with them, that you'll find various difficulties occurring throughout their lives. Various forms of hardship and various manners in which things are not apparently made easy for them. And if they receive, then something occurs and things happen. And you can see the manifestation of how opposing that which Allah has mentioned, how it manifests even if it is in a relative manner. It may not manifest in the way that it manifests with the kuffar. But even among the believers, those who have those characteristics of miserliness, not wanting to give, and even disliking that someone receives, that you'll find that hardship or elements of that hardship manifesting in their very lives, and them having difficulties in various issues and various affairs. Naturally, we can't, ikhwan, put our finger on the affair and say that is because of this. But the one who observes that which takes place within creation will know, ikhwan, that there are certain principles that Allah Azza wa Jal has laid down in His Quran. Al-jaza'u min jinsil amal. that the reward, for example, of a particular type of action and the recompense that a person receives returns back to the type of action that a person used to carry out. Or like that which is present within the Quran from the likes of these verses. أَمَّا مَنْ بَخِلَ وَاسْتَغْنَى وَكَذَّبَ بِالْحُسْنَى فَسَنُيَسِّرُهُ لِلْعُسْرَى. That characteristic of miserliness and covetousness, that it has, ikhwan, ramifications in the life of an individual. What does it harm you? How will it harm you if you rely upon the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal? Trust and believe in Allah and know that the Messenger ﷺ has described miserliness as the greatest form of ill or the greatest form of sickness. And know that if you give, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will cause and facilitate ease for you. Your financial situation even may change. That which is related, ayyuhal ikhwa, to the difficulties and the hardships that one receives in their life, you'll find even when one reads the biographies of the Salaf, that they would advise individuals who are going through certain things or have committed certain sins with giving in charity. And that is not a request, wallahi ikhwan, for any giving to the da'wah, to any center. In Tebi, don't let the shaitan trick you. Oh, here we go again. La. That, wallahi ikhwan, is nothing but encouraging our brothers and our sisters with that which is present within the ayah. Give to any individual you please. As long as that giving is in accordance, ikhwan, with the wujuhul khair, with the manners of good that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has legislated and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with. Inshallah, we'll continue, ikhwan, with the last portion of the surah in another session, inshallah. والله تعالى أعلم وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.